Maria Santos had always been small for her age. At 22 years old, she stood barely 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed less than most high school boys. When she walked into the military recruitment office in her hometown of San Antonio, Texas, the sergeant behind the desk barely looked up from his paperwork. He assumed she was there to ask about benefits for a boyfriend or husband. "Can I help you, miss?" he asked, still focused on his forms. The rifle's report echoed across the training area, and Maria watched through her scope as the target disappeared in a small cloud of debris. She had hit it cleanly, but now came the most difficult part of the exercise, remaining undetected while the instructors searched for her position. For the next 2 hours, Maria lay motionless in her carefully chosen hide site. Instructors moved through the area with binoculars and detection equipment, looking for any sign of the students who had successfully engaged the target. Several times, searchers passed within 50 feet of her position, but her concealment held. When the exercise finally ended, Maria had achieved something remarkable, a perfect score. She had successfully moved undetected across difficult terrain, located and engaged a target at extreme range, and avoided detection during the search phase. Only 6 of the remaining 21 students achieved passing scores on the exercise. Master Sergeant Thompson found Maria during the debrief session. "Outstanding work, Santos. That was one of the best stocks I've seen in 5 years of running this course." But even as Maria felt a surge of pride, she knew the real test was still coming. The final week of sniper school culminated in a series of practical exercises designed to simulate combat conditions. Students would face multiple targets at various ranges, unknown distances, moving targets, and time pressure that replicated the chaos of actual warfare. The first scenario took place at dawn on a range complex designed to look like a Middle Eastern village. Students were given intelligence about enemy positions and tasked with eliminating specific targets while avoiding civilians. The exercise would test not only shooting skills, but decision-making under pressure. Maria was paired with another student for the exercise, a Special Forces sergeant named Williams who had deployed 3 times to Afghanistan. Williams had been initially skeptical of Maria, but had grown to respect her abilities throughout the course. "You take the long shots," Williams told her as they planned their approach. "I'll handle anything under 400 yards. The targets were scattered throughout the mock village at ranges from 200 to over 1,000 yards. Some were clearly marked as enemy combatants, while others were mixed in with civilian targets, requiring careful identification and decision-making. As they moved into position, Maria spotted the first target, a silhouette positioned on a rooftop 650 yards away. The shot required precise elevation calculations and careful attention to wind conditions that were constantly shifting in the urban environment. Through her scope, Maria could see heat shimmer rising from the concrete buildings, creating a wavy distortion that made precise aiming difficult. She watched the nearby flags and vegetation, looking for patterns in the wind that would help her make an accurate shot. When the conditions seemed right, Maria took the shot. The target dropped immediately, indicating a successful hit. But there was no time to celebrate. Intelligence indicated multiple targets throughout the area, and students were being timed on how quickly they could identify and engage valid threats. The second target was even more challenging, a partially concealed figure positioned behind cover at an estimated 850 yards. Only a small portion of the target was visible, requiring exceptional precision to achieve a successful engagement. Maria made quick calculations in her head, adjusting her scope for the increased range. The wind had shifted since her first shot, now coming from a different angle that would push her bullet in the opposite direction. She made the necessary corrections and fired. Again, the target dropped cleanly. Williams, watching through binoculars, shook his head in amazement. "I've never seen shooting like this," he told her. "You're making shots that would challenge guys with years of combat experience." As the exercise continued, Maria successfully engaged target after target at ranges that pushed the limits of her equipment and training. Each shot was clean and decisive, demonstrating not only exceptional marksmanship, but the mental discipline to perform under pressure. The culminating challenge came on the final day with a shot that had become legendary among sniper school graduates. Students were taken to a range where a target had been placed at exactly 1,000 meters, over half a mile away. The target was smaller than previous exercises and positioned to be barely visible even with high-power scopes. More importantly, this shot was taken in front of the entire class and all the school's instructors. Students who missed would not necessarily fail the course, but making the shot had become a mark of distinction that separated good snipers from exceptional ones. The wind conditions that day were particularly challenging, with gusts reaching 15 to 20 miles per hour and constantly shifting direction. Several students had already attempted the shot and missed, with their bullets being blown off target by the unpredictable wind. When Maria's turn came, Master Sergeant Thompson made an unusual announcement to the assembled group. "Santos has consistently demonstrated exceptional marksmanship throughout this course," he said. "If she makes this shot, it will be one of the most impressive performances we've seen from any student." The pressure was enormous. Not only was Maria attempting one of the most difficult shots in the curriculum, but she was doing so with the knowledge that her performance was being specifically highlighted in front of students and instructors who had initially doubted her capabilities. Maria took her time setting up her position, carefully adjusting her bipod and settling into a comfortable prone stance. Through her scope, the target appeared impossibly small, barely larger than a pencil dot at that distance. She began her calculations, factoring in the 1,000-meter range, the constantly shifting wind, the temperature and humidity, and even the slight elevation difference between her position and the target. The mathematics were complex, but Maria had always excelled at the mental aspects of sniping. For several minutes, she watched the wind flags positioned at various points between her position and the target. The gusts were irregular, but she began to notice a pattern. Every few minutes, there would be a brief lull when the flags would hang nearly motionless for 10 to 15 seconds. Maria waited patiently for the next lull, controlling her breathing and keeping her crosshairs steady on the target. She could feel her heart beating and used the rhythm to time her breathing, just as her father had taught her years earlier on the ranch. When the wind flags showed the next calm period, Maria knew she had only seconds to take the shot. She made a final adjustment to her aim point, accounting for the slight wind drift she anticipated, and slowly began to squeeze the trigger. The world seemed to slow down in that moment. Maria was aware of the dozens of people watching her, but all of her focus was concentrated on the tiny target in her scope. Everything her father had taught her, everything she had learned during months of training, came together in this single moment. The rifle fired, and Maria maintained her position behind the scope to watch the bullet's impact. At 1,000 meters, it took over a second for the bullet to reach the target, and everyone watching held their breath during what seemed like an eternity. The target dropped, indicating a direct hit. The silence was broken by Williams, who had been watching through a spotting scope. "Dead center," he called out, his voice carrying across the range. The assembled group erupted in cheers and applause. Even instructors who had maintained professional detachment throughout the course were openly impressed. Master Sergeant Thompson approached Maria's position with a smile that he couldn't suppress. "Santos, in 12 years of running this course, I've seen fewer than 20 students make that shot," he told her. "You just joined a very exclusive group." But, for Maria, the significance of the moment went beyond the technical achievement of the shot itself. She had proven, to herself and to everyone who had doubted her, that size and gender were irrelevant when it came to the skills that truly mattered for a sniper: mental discipline, patience, precision, and the ability to perform under pressure. When graduation day arrived, Maria stood with the 11 other students who had successfully completed the course. She had not only graduated but had achieved the highest overall score in the class, excelling in both the academic and practical portions of the training. Master Sergeant Thompson presented her with the distinctive sniper badge, a symbol that represented not just completion of the course, but acceptance into an elite community of military marksmen. As he pinned the badge on her uniform, he spoke quietly enough that only Maria could hear. "You've changed how we think about what makes a good sniper," he said. "Size doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. What matters is what's up here." He tapped his temple. "And what's in here?" He pointed to his chest. Later that evening, as Maria packed her gear for her next assignment, She reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The doubting recruitment sergeant, the skeptical drill instructors, the fellow students who questioned whether women belonged in combat roles. All of their doubts had been answered by her performance on the ranges and in the field. But Maria also understood that this was just the beginning. Sniper school had taught her the technical skills and given her confidence in her abilities. But the real test would come when she deployed to a combat zone where the targets would shoot back, and the stakes would be measured in lives rather than scores. 3 months later, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos found herself in Afghanistan, assigned to a forward operating base near the Pakistani border. Her reputation from sniper school had preceded her, but she knew that combat would present challenges that no training course could fully prepare her for. The base was located in a valley surrounded by mountains, where Taliban fighters regularly engaged coalition forces from elevated positions that were difficult to assault directly. The terrain was perfect for sniper operations, with clear lines of sight extending for thousands of meters in multiple directions. On her 3rd week at the base, intelligence reports indicated that a high-value target, a Taliban commander responsible for numerous attacks on coalition forces, was operating from a compound in the mountains approximately 3,000 meters from the base. Previous attempts to capture or kill the target using conventional forces had failed due to the difficult terrain and strong defensive positions. Maria was tasked with providing overwatch for a special operations team that would attempt to approach the compound under cover of darkness. Her job was to provide long-range precision fire support if the team encountered resistance or if high-value targets presented themselves. The mission briefing took place at 0200 hours, with detailed intelligence about the target compound and surrounding terrain. The Taliban commander was known to appear on a specific balcony each morning around sunrise to survey the valley through binoculars. If Maria could get a clear shot at that range, it would eliminate a significant threat while avoiding the risks of a ground assault. At 3,000 meters, nearly 2 miles, the shot would be at the extreme limit of her rifle's effective range and would require perfect conditions and flawless execution. The margin for error would be measured in inches at that distance, and factors like wind, temperature, and atmospheric pressure would have enormous effects on bullet trajectory. As Maria prepared her equipment and moved to her firing position, she thought about the path that had brought her to this moment. Every doubter, every skeptical comment, every challenge she had faced had prepared her for this opportunity to make a difference in actual combat. The sunrise shot at 3,000 meters would not just be another target on a training range. It would be the ultimate validation of everything she had worked for and the final answer to anyone who had ever doubted that she belonged among the military's elite snipers. "I want to enlist," Maria said quietly but firmly. The sergeant finally looked up, taking in her petite frame and soft voice. He tried not to smile. "What branch are you thinking about?" "The Air Force has some nice administrative positions." 6 months after basic training, Maria stood outside the gates of the U.S. Army Sniper School at Fort Moore, Georgia. The facility looked more like a college campus than a military installation, but Maria knew that behind the ordinary buildings lay some of the most challenging training in the American military. She was one of 36 students selected for the 8-week course, and, predictably, she was the only woman. The other students were seasoned soldiers, many with combat experience from deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. Several were Special Forces operators, Rangers, and Marine Corps infantry veterans. All of them were bigger and stronger than Maria. Chief Instructor Master Sergeant David "Snake" Thompson had been running sniper courses for 12 years. He had seen every type of student imaginable, but when he looked at Maria during the initial briefing, he made no effort to hide his skepticism. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the class, his voice carrying across the briefing room, "welcome to the hardest school in the Army. Look around you. More than half of you will not graduate. The standards here don't bend for anyone or anything." His eyes lingered on Maria for just a moment longer than the others. The first week was designed to break students mentally before the real training even began. Students were required to carry 50-pound packs during 12-mile marches, crawl through mud for hours while maintaining their equipment, and memorize hundreds of pages of technical manuals. 3 students dropped out in the first 4 days. Maria struggled with the physical demands more than most, but She had learned coping strategies during basic training. While other students tried to power through exercises using brute strength, Maria focused on technique and efficiency. During ruck marches, she found ways to distribute weight more effectively. During crawling exercises, she used her smaller size to her advantage, finding paths through obstacles that larger students couldn't navigate. But it was in the classroom where Maria truly began to distinguish herself. Sniper training involved complex mathematics, weather analysis, ballistics calculations, and target identification. Students had to learn to estimate distances by eye, calculate bullet drop over various ranges, and account for wind speed and direction. Santos, Instructor Sergeant First Class Mike Rodriguez called out during a ballistics lesson. What's the bullet drop for a .300 Winchester Magnum at 800 yards in a 15-mile-per-hour crosswind? Maria closed her eyes for a moment, running calculations in her head. Approximately 31 inches of drop, Sergeant. With a right-to-left wind at that speed, roughly 18 inches of drift. Rodriguez checked his charts. Correct. The classroom success didn't go unnoticed by other students, but it also didn't immediately translate to acceptance. During breaks, Maria often found herself eating alone or studying while others socialized. Some students were openly dismissive. I don't care how good she is with math, she heard one Ranger veteran tell another. When we get to the real shooting, she's going to fold. Women just don't have the mental toughness for this job. The comment stung, but Maria had heard variations of it her entire life. She used it as motivation to work harder, spending extra hours in the study rooms and on the practice ranges. The first live-fire exercise came in week 3. Students were required to engage targets at ranges from 300 to 1,000 yards using standard military sniper rifles. Each student had to achieve a passing score on multiple scenarios, including timed shots, moving targets, and unknown distance engagements. Master Sergeant Thompson watched through binoculars as each student took their turn on the 800-yard range. The target was a silhouette representing an enemy soldier, and students had one shot to achieve a kill. Miss, and they would have to repeat the exercise until they passed or were dropped from the course. When Maria's turn came, Thompson was particularly interested. Despite her classroom performance, he still had doubts about her ability to perform under the pressure of live fire with a full-size sniper rifle system. Maria approached the firing line carrying an M24 sniper weapon system, a rifle that weighed nearly twice as much as the hunting rifle she had grown up with. She took her time setting up her position, adjusting the bipod legs, and settling into a comfortable prone position. Through her scope, the target looked impossibly small. The wind was gusting unpredictably, and heat shimmer from the Georgia sun made precise aiming difficult. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, running through her father's old lessons about patience and breathing. When she opened her eyes, the world seemed to narrow down to just her crosshairs and the target. She could feel her heartbeat, timing her breathing to the natural rhythm of her pulse. The wind seemed to slow, and, for a moment, everything was perfectly still. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and Maria watched through the scope as the bullet found its mark dead center in the target's chest. Hit, called the range safety officer. Thompson lowered his binoculars with a slight nod of approval. It had been a clean, professional shot under challenging conditions. But one good shot didn't make a sniper. As the weeks progressed, the exercises became increasingly difficult. Students were required to make shots at unknown distances, often while carrying heavy packs, and after completing physically demanding approaches. They learned urban shooting, shooting from vehicles, and long-range precision shooting at distances exceeding 1,000 yards. Maria continued to struggle with some physical aspects of the training, particularly when it came to carrying the heavy sniper rifle systems over long distances. During one exercise, she fell behind her partner during a 5-mile approach to a target area. By the time they reached their firing position, she was exhausted and shaking from fatigue. "You okay, Santos?" Her partner, a Marine Corps veteran named Jenkins, asked with genuine concern. "I'm fine," Maria replied, though she was clearly struggling. Jenkins had been one of the students who initially questioned whether Maria belonged in the course, but he had developed respect for her determination and skill. "Take a minute to recover. We've got time." The target for this exercise was 1,200 yards away, farther than Maria had ever attempted in training. The shot required precise calculations for elevation, wind, and atmospheric conditions. More importantly, it required absolute mental focus despite physical exhaustion. Maria set up her rifle and began her calculations. The wind was shifting unpredictably, and the target was partially obscured by vegetation. She watched the wind flags for several minutes, looking for patterns in the gusts. Jenkins watched through a spotting scope as Maria made final adjustments to her scope. He had seen many students attempt this same shot over the years, and the success rate was less than 50% even under ideal conditions. When Maria fired, Jenkins immediately saw the impact through his scope. "Dead center," he called out, unable to hide the admiration in his voice. The successful long-range shot marked a turning point in how other students viewed Maria. Word spread quickly through the class that the small woman from Texas had nailed one of the most difficult shots in the curriculum on her first attempt, despite being exhausted from the approach march. Master Sergeant Thompson had also taken notice. During the nightly instructor meetings, he found himself revising his initial assessment of Maria's potential. "She's got something I can't teach," he told the other instructors. "Natural ability combined with mental discipline. The question is whether she can handle the pressure when it really counts." The final test came in week 7 with the culminating exercise known as the stalk. Students were required to move undetected across several miles of terrain, locate a hidden target, and engage it successfully while avoiding detection by experienced instructors acting as enemy forces. The exercise began before dawn, with students starting from different positions around a large training area. Maria was assigned one of the most challenging routes, requiring her to cross open ground and navigate through areas where other students had been caught and failed in previous classes. Moving slowly and carefully, Maria used every piece of concealment available. She crawled through drainage ditches, moved along fence lines, and used natural terrain features to mask her approach. The progress was painfully slow, but she remembered her father's lessons about patience being more important than speed. After 4 hours of careful movement, Maria reached a position where she could see the target area. Using her binoculars, she began searching for the hidden target that instructors had placed somewhere in the complex terrain ahead. For nearly an hour, she glassed the area methodically, looking for anything out of place. Finally, she spotted it, a small target placed behind a log nearly 900 yards away, barely visible even with magnification. The shot would be challenging under any circumstances, but Maria was now dealing with fatigue from hours of crawling, heat from the Georgia sun, and the pressure of knowing that this single shot would largely determine whether she graduated from sniper school. She carefully established her firing position, making sure she was properly concealed from the instructors who were actively searching for students with binoculars and other detection equipment. The mathematics were complex, requiring her to account for the significant distance, changing wind conditions, and the fact that she was shooting from an elevated position. As Maria prepared to take the shot that would define her military career, she thought briefly about all the people who had doubted her capabilities. The recruitment sergeant who had smiled at her ambitions. The drill instructors who questioned whether she was strong enough. The fellow students who believed women couldn't handle the mental pressure of being a sniper. But, mostly, she thought about her father's voice. "Don't think about who's watching. Don't think about what happens if you miss. Just see the target and trust your training." Maria controlled her breathing, settled her crosshairs on the target, and slowly began to squeeze the trigger. "I want to be a sniper," Maria replied without hesitation. This time the sergeant did smile, then caught himself. He had seen many young people walk through his door with unrealistic dreams, but this was different. This tiny young woman wanted to join one of the most physically and mentally demanding roles in the military. "Ma'am, do you understand what being a sniper involves? The physical requirements alone." He started. "I can shoot," Maria interrupted. "I've been shooting since I was 7 years old." What the sergeant didn't know was that Maria had grown up on a small ranch outside the city. Her father, Carlos, was a former police officer who had taught her to shoot out of necessity. Living in an isolated area where the nearest neighbor was miles away, he wanted his daughter to be able to protect herself and help protect their livestock from predators. Carlos had started her with a small .22 rifle, teaching her the basics of breathing, trigger control, and patience. By the time Maria was 12, she could hit a tin can at 200 yards consistently. By 15, she was helping her father with pest control on neighboring ranches, taking out coyotes and wild hogs from distances that impressed even experienced hunters. But nobody at the recruitment office knew this. They saw a quiet, small young woman who looked like she might struggle to carry a heavy backpack, let alone a sniper rifle system that could weigh over 20 pounds. The sergeant went through the standard questions and paperwork, but his tone suggested he was just going through the motions. He explained the physical fitness requirements, the mental demands, and the lengthy training process. With each point, he watched Maria's face, expecting to see doubt or hesitation creep in. Instead, her expression remained calm and determined. The washout rate for sniper school is over 70%, he warned. Most of those who fail are big, strong men who thought they had what it takes. I understand, Maria said simply. 3 months later, Maria found herself at basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. From day one, she faced skepticism from drill sergeants and fellow recruits alike. During the first physical fitness test, she struggled with pull-ups and barely met the minimum requirements for push-ups. The other recruits, mostly men in their late teens and early 20s, towered over her during formation. Santos, Drill Sergeant Johnson barked during the second week. You think you're going to make it in the real army being that small? Yes, Drill Sergeant, Maria responded. I've seen bigger house cats, he shouted back, causing several recruits to snicker. But Johnson, a 20-year veteran, had also noticed something about Santos that the others missed. While she struggled with upper body strength exercises, she excelled in areas that required precision and patience. During rifle training, while other recruits sprayed bullets across the target range, Maria's shots were consistently grouped tight in the center rings. The real revelation came during a field exercise in week 6. The recruits were divided into teams for a simulated patrol mission. Maria's team was tasked with identifying and eliminating mock enemy positions hidden throughout a wooded training area. While her teammates rushed forward, scanning the obvious hiding spots, Maria moved slowly and methodically. Santos, keep up, her team leader hissed. But Maria had spotted something the others missed. Nearly 400 yards away, barely visible through the trees, was the glint of metal from a hidden observation post. She raised her training rifle and, using the iron sights, placed a perfect shot on the target. The exercise controllers were stunned. The target was supposed to be nearly impossible to spot, let alone hit, from that distance with basic equipment. They had to verify with binoculars that the shot had actually connected. Word spread quickly through the training company. The tiny recruit who could barely do 10 pull-ups had just made a shot that most experienced soldiers would struggle with. Drill Sergeant Johnson pulled Maria aside after the exercise. Where did you learn to shoot like that? He asked, his usual harsh tone replaced by curiosity. My father taught me, Drill Sergeant, Maria replied. Your father military? No, Drill Sergeant. Police officer. We lived on a ranch. Johnson nodded slowly. He had grown up hunting in rural Georgia and understood what that meant. Ranch shooting was different from military training. It was practical, real-world marksmanship developed out of necessity, not sport. As basic training progressed, Maria began to earn grudging respect from her fellow recruits. She still struggled with some physical challenges, but her shooting skills were undeniable. More importantly, she demonstrated a mental toughness that surprised everyone, including herself. During a particularly brutal week of field exercises, when several larger and seemingly stronger recruits had been sent home for various failures, Maria quietly persevered. She didn't complain when her pack felt too heavy or when the Alabama heat became unbearable. She simply adapted and continued moving forward. The transformation wasn't lost on the drill sergeants. Staff Sergeant Williams, the senior instructor, had seen thousands of recruits come through basic training over his 15-year career. He recognized something special in Santos that went beyond her obvious shooting talent. She's got what we call quiet strength, he told Johnson during a break between exercises. She doesn't make a lot of noise, but she doesn't quit either. By graduation day, Maria had not only completed basic training successfully but had earned the respect of her peers and instructors. More importantly, she had proven to herself that she belonged. The recommendation for advanced marksmanship training was already in her file, along with a note that would follow her throughout her military career. Exceptional natural shooter with outstanding mental discipline. Recommend for sniper training. But even as she prepared to leave Fort Benning for her next assignment, Maria knew the real challenges were just beginning. Sniper school would be different from basic training. The standards would be higher, the competition fiercer, and the doubts about her capabilities would be even stronger. As she packed her gear and said goodbye to the other soldiers in her company, Maria thought about her father's words from years earlier. Size doesn't matter if you can see what others miss and hit what others can't. She had proven the first part was true. Now she would get the chance to prove the second part as well.